behalf of SSR College of Pharmacy, I take the privilege to introduce our next speaker of the day, Dr. Rakesh Rawal sir. Dr. Rakesh Rawal sir is a professor in Department of Life Science in Gujarat University, Ahmedabad. Sir has completed his PhD from Gujarat University in cancer biology. Sir is expertise in biology, cancer biology, stem cell biology, and bioinformatics. Sir has done many more publications involving journal articles in proceedings, review, miscellaneous chapter, conference paper, etc. Sir has been awarded as the Best Professor of the Year at Gujarat University. Sir is an active member in Indian Association of Cancer Research Life Member from 2005 and Institutional Biosafety Committee BPT nominee from 2019. Sun has done patent on a peptide inhibiting sequence of license specific demethylase 1 enzyme. Sir has been active member also in RPC. We can't wait to gain a knowledge from such an eminent personality. Thank you. Sir, you can proceed with the session.
Namaskar. So good afternoon, everyone, those who are present here. And it's indeed a real pride and pleasure to be part of this academic session. And I'm really thankful to the whole organizing team for this. And today's session that is given to me is application of OECD principles of GLP to in vitro studies. So before going to the textual part of OECD principles, let me quickly go through what are the in vitro studies which are being used in any pharmaceutical drug discovery or drug development. So if we have a bird's eye view on the whole drug discovery pipeline, we can see that if we start with, say, a few thousands compounds or a few million compounds, and we want to look for the right hit or the lead candidate out of those. And during this process, when we start with thousands of compounds, we ended up in screening a few hundreds of compounds. And these in vitro screening, followed by the in vivo screening in the animal models, will end you up in a few 10, within 10 of compounds, which find its fate to enter into a clinical trial. And out of those compounds which are entering into clinical trial, hardly 1 in 10 may really see the light at the end. That means through FDA approval, and finally it may enter into the list of approved drugs. And if you look at the whole process, it takes somewhere around 10 to 15 years. This timeline has been substantially reduced nowadays by the involvement of bioinformatic tools in the initial screening, which we call it as in silico screening or virtual screening of drug when the target is known. So when the target is known, possibly we can, with the use of a few bioinformatic tools, we can narrow down the potent hit or the lead molecules substantially, and that gives an ease to the preclinical screening, the in vitro screening. And it also decreases the cost of investment in screening the thousands of compounds. And instead of that, we ended up in hundreds of compounds. Looking at the in vitro testing of drugs, that means the lead information or clue that is given by the in silico tools. We wish to explore that which compound of the list is really binding to our target. So this in vitro or toxicity testing. So when we are aiming at bringing the molecule as a drug, we wish to check whether the compound is toxic to the system or not. And for that, the in vitro testing is called as the scientific analysis of the effect of toxic chemical substances on cultured microbes or mammalian cells. So usually for pharmaceutical drug testing, we use more of this mammalian cells. But whenever in an academic institutions, people synthesize new molecules, whether it is through chemical route or whether it is through natural route, they usually screen the antibacterial, antiviral, and anti-cancer effect as a part of the routine analysis. The term in vitro is taken from in glass because on those days glass plates were used for culturing of cells. Now it is more of disposable plastic wares, and it is outside the body. That means in the artificial conditions. And the main intention was to identify potentially hazardous chemicals and to confirm the lack of certain toxic property in the early stage so that it doesn't get withdrawn at the later stage of drug discovery, because by that time the company must have invested millions of dollars. The in vitro toxicity testing methods can be more useful and cost effective than toxicological studies involving animals. So that we call it as in vivo or in life method. And therefore, only those substances which qualifies the in vitro studies later on get tested on the in vivo system. So in vitro methods that are being currently used for screening all those toxic drug compound or chemicals, they usually do the estimation of the basal function of the cells, or we look at whether it is effective against the specialized function in the cell. So whether we are using a normal tissue-derived cell or cell line to check the generalized toxicity, or whether it is an anti-cancer drug with some specialized function or presence of specialized receptor to establish a targeted therapy. So it depends on what type of molecule we are trying to screen. So for general toxicity studies, more commonly used cell lines include the human lung fibroblast cell line like WI38 or tumor cell line like HeLa A549. There are a long list of these cell lines. So the first and most readily observed effect following the exposure of cell to toxicant is the morphological alteration in the cell layer. That means cell shape, size in the monolayer culture. At the same time, other than the visual assessment, we usually look for a few endpoints as a part of the assessment protocol, including the cell morphology. So once the cell shows blebbing or vacuolization, that means the substance is toxic to the cell. We also look for cell viability using viability dye like trypan blue, neutral, red, or there are a long list of those reaction chemistries. We also look for cell growth, right? So we usually do the cell counting, the plating efficiency. We also look for the DNA content in the form of phases of cell cycle, that in which phase of the cell is. The glucose consumption, looking at its metabolic parameters. Or we usually look the cell growth or cell death using MTTSA or the lactate production. So these are various endpoints which can be assessed. The metabolic parameter like the consumption of oxygen, production of ATP, and the conversion of NADH to NAD. And to do these, there are various specialized cells commonly used in the in vitro screening methods. So if it is a nervous system, we can get cells from the primary tissues like cheek embryo, ganglia, or brain cells from mouse and rat, cerebellum, and all those. And these are the list of cell lines. So if it is human cell, cancer cell, it is A549 for lung. And similarly for liver, there are other cell and cell line derived from either primary cell or from cancer cells. So the endpoint assessment of toxicity in the form of markers. We usually look for the synthesis or release of specific molecule so that we can compare between the control and test. So that means without exposure and with exposure, and we look for the amount of these molecules or markers being released into the supernatant. We can also look at the synthesis and activity release of specific enzymes. So it depends on what type of cell we are dealing with. So if it is a liver cell, then in that case, the amount of albumin can be the specific molecule, but the activity like the various transferases or the various liver enzymes can be used to assess the functional capability of the cells. So interaction of compound with the cell, so whether it is acting at the cell surface receptor or whether it is acting on intracellularly. So depending on that, we can pinpoint on several markers for assessment, including phagocytosis or the cytoplasmic inclusions or intracellular accumulation of the drug. And ultimately, these drugs may cause alteration in the metabolic pathway of the cell. So, in the form of the glucose metabolism or in the form of other macromolecular metabolism, including lipid peroxidation and all this. So, all these can be assessed using specific markers involved in those metabolic pathways. We can also look for cell surface activities like its adhesiveness or membrane polarization, including the mitochondrial membrane polarization and all those. So whether it is intracellular or extracellular, we can look for the cell surface activities. We can have also intracellular markers specific for specific subcellular organelle so that we come to know where these molecules are acting. So whether it is acting on mitochondria, whether it is acting on lysosomes or peroxisomes. So ultimately, all these indirectly will give you the toxicity that is being posed by this compound on the cell. So cell viability and cytotoxicity assays are used to screen these drugs or the cytotoxicity of the chemical. And this in vitro test, it evaluates the potential of this material to their extracts to cause damage to cells in cultures. So why cell culture is a suitable test system to determine the cytotoxic nature of the compound? The main purpose is to avoid unnecessary killing of animals. And if we can assess the cytotoxicity or toxicity of the compound beforehand, before going to the in vivo screening, it will be of much help. And these determinations of cytotoxicity can lead to changes in their cell cycle or inhibition of cell division or inducing cell death, either due to apoptosis, necrosis, autophagy. So there are various ways the cell can be killed. Also. So the whole cytotoxicity profiling can be divided into methods which deals with qualitative estimation of cytotoxicity, or the methods which deals with quantitative measure of the cytotoxicity. So let's quickly go through those. If you look at the qualitative cytotoxicity test, there are many simple tests like extraction method, in which using MEM, agar diffusion assay, and direct contact method. So in general, these tests, the toxicity is verified after a period of exposure, usually from 24 hours to 72 hours. The cells are exposed to the extract or the substance or the device even before claiming its toxicity or cytotoxicity. In case of MEM elution method, that is the test on extracts. So the test material is extracted for 24 hours in the minimum essential medium. So this is the medium in which the cell grows. And an extract is prepared from the test material, which is then placed over the culture. Here, the example, it is taken as mouse fibroblast cells. And following incubation, cells are examined microscopically for morphological changes, degenerative changes, lysis of the cells, that means all cell death, apoptosis, necrosis. And this potentially cytotoxic compound, they uniformly kill the cell, and you can visibly quantify that. But this is a qualitative test. In case of agar diffusion or agarose overlay assay, a layer of agar is poured on the top of the cells, and the test material, it can be an extract of the test material, or it can be the dried extract on the filter paper, is placed on the top of the agar layer, and they are incubated for 24 hours to 72 hours. And the compound, it leaches out of these support, and it enters into the agarose layer, diffuses out into the onto the cell. And the cytotoxic leachates, which diffuses into the cell layer via agar, a zone of malformed or degenerative or lysed cells gives an example or gives a clue that the test may have cytotoxic nature. Similarly, there is a direct contact. So earlier two were indirect contact. This is a direct contact, where a piece of test material is placed directly onto the cell. And this material is imbibed with whatever substance that we need to assess. The cells are grown in a monolayer, and usually these are incubated for 24 hours at 37 degrees centigrade. And during this incubation, the leachable chemical in the test material can diffuse into the culture medium and contact the cell layer. And subsequently, the monolayers are examined microscopically for the presence of morphological changes or reduction in cell density. In opposed to that, there are several quantitative cytotoxic assays which can be listed. These are based on the evaluation of cell number, viability by measuring the metabolic activity or membrane permeability. So the most common assay is MTT assay, which you must have heard and you must be regularly using this. There are neutral red assay or calcine assay and LDH assay. So these are used for quantitative estimation of cytotoxicity. If you look at MTT assay, it usually measures the mitochondrial activity. So if the mitochondrial activity is intact, that means the cell is intact and the cell is viable. And the dye that is used is a dimethyl thiazole and formazine, and it is a yellow color dye when it is used. So once this dye enters into the cell, so this is permeable to cell and this is water soluble. When it enters into the cell and comes in contact with mitochondria, then this mitochondrial reductase that converts this yellow color dye into a purple formazine, and this purple formazine is insoluble and it remains inside the cell. And this mitochondrial succinate dehydrogenase is responsible for this conversion. So dead cells do not have active mitochondrial reductase, so it cannot convert the yellow color into a purple color formazine. So the presence of purple color formazine and the amount of purple color formazine that is being produced is representative of the amount of viable cells. So if this is a pictorial representation of all possible methods, so we discussed about this, where MTT, which is yellow color dye, enters into the cell. When it comes in contact with succinate dehydrogenase in the mitochondria, it converts the dye into a purple formation, which gets precipitated inside the cell. And later on, this is extracted through isopropyl alcohol isopropyl alcohol, and the optical density is measured at 570 nanometer in an ELISA plate. So as opposed to the unexposed cell, which is acting as control, which is showing highest amount of the purple colored dye, if you take that as 100%, and subsequently you can calculate the number of viable cells in the subsequent step. So it is usually being used to assess the cytotoxicity of any chemical compound or natural compound, or any environmental pollution, or even potent anti-cancer drugs. In case of calcine assay, so calcine is a acetomethoxy derivative of calcine, and it is used for testing of cell viability, as it can be transported through the cellular membrane into live cells. So after transporting into cell, the intracellular esterase, it removes the acetomethoxy group, and it gives a green fluorescence. So as dead cell lack the active esterase, only live cell will be labeled with the green fluorescence. So this is again the pictorial representation of that. In presence of active esterase, this calcine is converted into the fluorescein molecule. And you can count the number of fluorescent molecule, number of fluorescent stained cells in the total. Similarly, there are assays known as neutral red assay, which measures the lysosomal activity and membrane permeability. And based on that, this is also used to estimate the number of viable cells. So it is a weak cationic dye that readily penetrates the cell membrane by non-ionic diffusion and accumulate intracellularly in lysosomes, where it binds with these anionic sites in the lysosomal matrix. So based on the staining intensity, we can calculate the number of viable cells. The last one is the membrane integrity based assay, in which the lactate dehydrogenase, it is the most ubiquitous enzyme, and it is responsible for the end conversion of glycolysis, lactate to pyruvate and pyruvate to lactate. It is present in almost all eukaryotic cells. And this enzyme is released into the culture medium once the cell lies or the cell membrane breaks. And therefore, it is associated with membrane integrity. So loss of integrity is loss of viability. And the increase in LDH activity in culture supernatant is proportional to the number of lysed cells, or the cells which are actively dying. So LDH activity, therefore, can be used as an indicator for cell membrane integrity and serves as a general means to assess cytotoxicity. And this is a spectrophotometric measurement where the conversion of lactate to pyruvate in presence of NAD can be estimated with a simple water-soluble reaction, and the OD can be measured between 490 to 520. And this is again the pictorial representation of. So all these are the methods which can assess the cell viability, or we can say cytotoxicity, using some quantitative estimation. So where you can get a approximation in terms of percentage of viable cells or percentage of death, and ultimately we plot them into a concentration versus percent viability, and we get the IC50 value. So that gives the concentration of substance at which 50%. So till now, whatever we discussed is all are in the 2 dimension. That means they are the monolayer cells which are plated on a plastic surface, or the cells in suspension, but they are in individual unit. But the issue is that the cells which behaves in its 2 dimension, it doesn't exactly mimic the real cells in its 3-dimensional state. And therefore, in comparison to 2-dimensional culture, 3-dimensional cell models create a more realistic representation of real human tissue. So if you look at, say, presence of a tumor within an organ, it has a 3-dimensional architecture with presence of extracellular matrix and cell-to-cell binding of the cell molecules. And to mimic that, now people are establishing a three-dimensional cell culture. We call it a spheroid model, or so this is created by taking the advantage of the adhesiveness of the cells between them, and the more aggressively dividing cells they form aggregates and form spheroids, which can be in the form of a floating method, or it can be worked on a hanging drop method, where the cell spheroid, which is in floating state, it can mimic more closely to the in vivo situation as compared to a flat two-dimensional screening. And many of these methods are being currently used for the high throughput screening methods in the pharmaceutical industry for a large scale drug discovery. Now, looking at the whole process, as we know, in the drug discovery pipeline, the first part of preclinical is the in vitro studies. And then, based on the in vitro study results, we can move on to in vivo, where we will see the effect of all these substances on the organ toxicity level, the pharmacokinetics and dynamics, either in small rodent or in larger animal. In this, looking at all these, OECD has formulated a guideline for the conduct of in vitro studies. And if we look at the 14th protocol, or chapter 14th of the OECD guideline, it is specifically for in vitro studies. So let's go to the historical aspect of how this guideline was developed. So this was an effort to decrease the use of animal in safety testing and to enhance the importance of in vitro methodology for safety testing, beyond their traditional use as a test system in the area of genetic toxicity testing. So this in vitro testing was used since long for various studies, but mainly the intention was to check the genotoxicity of any compound at the cellular level or at the chromosomal level. So a working group established a task force under the leadership of Switzerland, and they met at Bern in the February 2004. And the member countries were Belgium, France, Germany, Japan, Netherlands. So they all met and they draft the first advisory document, and it was submitted to the working group in the May. And finally, the consensus was developed and it was released. So since then, if you see the OECD guideline of in vitro testing, it is published in 2004. So that guideline is still going on. So why there was a requirement? So safety studies can be planned, conducted, recorded, reported, and archived in accordance to the OECD principles of good laboratory practice. Since you all are from pharmaceutical background, you must be aware about the good laboratory practice that is being prevailing to conduct the good scientific experiment. So the purpose of this document was to provide general guidance on the conduct of all non-clinical health and environmental safety studies, including in vitro studies, both for the test facility. So test facility is the place where this whole study is being conducted. And this includes the role of management, QA, study director, various personnel involved in that, and a national GLP compliance monitoring authorities. So this document provides all those details. And to obtain data on their properties and or their safety with respect to human health or the environment. The ultimate aim is to the safety of human being and the environment. So the scope of this guideline or the document is specific to the application of the principle of GLP to in vitro studies conducted in the framework of non-clinical safety testing. So what it includes or what it aims at? It contains pharmaceutical products or pesticides, cosmetic products, veterinary drugs, food additives, feed additives, industrial chemical, which may be synthetic, natural, or biologic origin. So it mainly encompasses all those which are either being used for human or any living system, or looking at the safety to the environment. So there are a few definitions in that which will be used further in the slides. So first one is in vitro studies. So we all are now acquainted with what in vitro study is in our earlier slides. So studies which do not use a multicellular whole organism, but rather microorganisms or materials isolated from whole organism or simulations thereof as a test system. So henceforth, whatever test system when it comes, that means it is dealing with the cells which are being used for in vitro studies. And usually, since the study is not going beyond, say, 72 hours, it falls under the purview of OECD GLP principle of short-term studies. Here, the reference item can be a positive, negative, or a vehicle control, and these controls are used in each in vitro study protocol. And it controls the proper performance of the test system. It signifies the responsibilities of those individuals or stakeholders involved in the whole study. So first and foremost, it is the test facility management. That means the place where you are going to work. So the objective was to ensure the availability of qualified personnel. So the person who are handling or going to handle the cells or cell lines should be qualified enough to handle that, and of appropriate facility and equipment for the timely and proper conduct of the study. So it is not only the person, but also the equipment and the appropriate infrastructure available to conduct the study. It ensures that specific training is provided to all the personnel involved in this for aseptic handling of the cell lines and all those, and the biohazards material that is being used in the study. It ensures availability of specialized area and the implementation of procedures to avoid contamination of the test system. So avoiding contamination is one of the important criteria. Test facility supplies. So whatever reagents, consumables being used for these in vitro studies, so proprietary material or test kit, it should meet the requirement appropriate for their use. So if you see, there are tens of companies who are supplying, say, media, or who are supplying, say, fetal calf serum, which is being used for an in vitro studies. So how to assess the quality of that? So whether it is fetal calf serum of Australian origin, whether it is fetal calf serum of American origin, and what are the issues with that, which one we should use. So ultimately, this becomes the responsibility of the institution and the study director for that. To confirm that these conditions are adequately fulfilled through assessment of the supplier's practice, procedures, and policies. So each organization has to formulate a policy, a procedure, and the practices for procurement and for doing the things. If you focus on the whole hierarchy for a in vitro screening setup, usually there is a study director or a principal investigator, and there are study personnel who are involved in direct handling of the cells. So the responsibility of study director is to look for the overall conduct and reporting of the study, and he ensures the implemented test method that are structurally, functionally, and mechanistically similar to a validated reference test method to just to show a comparable performance. The document characteristic of the test system means whatever cell lines that are being used should be authenticated, that if I'm using A549, I have to prove, because each cell line has got a marker profile. So based on that, authentication is done through various techniques, including the karyotyping methods, including molecular methods, by analyzing the microsatellite markers. Age and passage. So a cell line of lower passage is desirable, and as the number of passage goes on, the cells lose some of their characteristic. We have to look at the origin of the cells, whether it is human origin, whether it is some other animal origin, whether it is from cancer tumor, or it is being transformed artificially. So all these need to be checked by the study director or principal investigator. The study personnel who is directly involved in screening, he should observe the aseptic conditions and follow the respective procedures that is being formulated by the lab or the organization to conduct the in vitro studies to avoid pathogen contamination in the test system. So there are fungal contamination, there are bacterial contamination, there are viral contamination during the whole process. So how to avoid that? To avoid cross contamination between the test systems. So if I'm working on a in vitro screening of a compound and I'm dealing with 3-4 cell lines, then there are chances that I cross contaminate any of these cells between each other. And to avoid such cross contamination, you have to deal with them in a sequential manner, one by one, so that you avoid cross contaminating the cells. And the person should be aware of handling the biohazardous molecules. In each pharmaceutical company, there is a section of quality assurance. And here, they refer to the GLP principles of short-term studies for whatever that is being laid down in that. It is applicable to the OECD in vitro studies also. So quality assurance to inspect especially the critical phases of a study in cooperation with the study director, principal investigator, and the study personnel. So all these three are involved along with the QC personnel, quality assurance personnel. And what they do, they monitor the batches of components of cell and tissue culture media that are critical to the performance of the test system. So as I told, the fetal calf serum, from which origin it is, whether it is endotoxin free, whether it is free from any other viruses, all these need to be checked as a part of quality assurance. Assessing and ensuring the functional and morphological status of the cells. So whenever you are using the cells or the passage of cell that is being used for the study, they have intact morphological as well as the chromosomal arrangement that is being proper, or it is as per the original cell type. They monitor the potential contamination by foreign cells like other pathogens like mycoplasma. Mycoplasma is one of the biggest challenge and troublesome for all in vitro studies. Cleaning and decontamination, whether it is properly going on or not. So that is being observed by the quality assurance person. So based on the checklist that is being maintained by the study person. So cleaning and decontamination of the place, the equipment, all those are being ensured. Ensuring that specialized equipment is properly used and maintained. Ensuring proper cryopreservation and reconstitution of cells and tissues, which are being used for that. Ensuring proper condition for retrieval of the material from frozen state. So whenever you receive the cells, you might receive them in cryo states, either in liquid nitrogen or dry ice. And then you preserve them, and when you require them, you have to thaw. So the process of freezing, thawing, and using, and again seeding them is the whole process which need to be monitored and controlled way. we have to ensure the sterility of the material and supplies used for the cell screening. We have to maintain adequate separation between different studies. As I told, to avoid cross contamination, you have to maintain sufficient separation between the two studies. Either you have to adopt a sequential manner, or you have to adopt a different hood in which you work. You have to adopt a different incubation facility so that there is least chance of cross contamination. But that depends on the policy of the institution and the availability of infrastructure in the facilities. Mainly includes, if you see a routine in vitro cell culture lab, first of all, it is a sterile place or the room uh, in which you have a biosafety cabinet or laminar airflow system class 2A2 and a CO2 incubator and a microscope for visual inspection of the cells. So, and the various accessories which are used during the whole process. So, we have to see that the overall facility in general is suitable, adequate, and properly maintained. The test system facility, that means sufficient number of rooms or area to ensure that the integrity of the test system is not jeopardized by the possibility of potential contamination or cross contamination. So again, that depends on the availability and the affordability of the institution or the company. So if there is lack of multiple systems, possibly you can adopt a sequential manipulation of the test system. That means you finish up screening one cell line and then you take up the other cell line. So that is a sequential way of doing that. Or appropriate identifiers, properly label each and every plate or each and every tube that you are using with their proper location, everything, so that it is traceable. Devoted rooms and areas with special equipment for long-term storage of the test system, like freezing at -70 or cryopreservation in liquid nitrogen at -170, based on how you are going to deal with those cells in a later stage. Facilities for handling test and reference item. So these are the compounds that you have tested, and when you are dealing with a new drug molecule, that means you have to keep the reference item till the end of the study, and to avoid its cross contamination with other reference material for by aseptic and sequential and apparatus, material, and reagents. So these are the things which are there in the cell screening or in vitro screening facility. All these apparatus, whether it is a CO2 incubator, whether it is laminar airflow system, or whether even it is the simplest pipetting system, balances, all these need to be regularly maintained, monitored, and calibration at a defined time frame. The material that is being used, we should look for the expiry and integrity. So even if it is within expiry date, it is if it is a hygroscopic substance, we have to look at the integrity of the substance. The reagents that is being prepared by the technical staff or the personnel, that it is properly labeled, its concentration is mentioned, and prepared by, that means the person who has prepared on which date it is being prepared, and prepared for which purpose, so that the same reagent may not be used by someone else for some other reason. Test system also, the condition of the test system has to be recorded, and it has to be kept in a specified environmental condition. And suppose you are maintaining liquid nitrogen, CO2, the temperature and humidity of the room, the cell passage number, the population doubling time of those cells. So each and everything need to be recorded. Whether it is being treated with antibiotic, antifungal, and how many times it has been subcultivated. Whenever we receive a a newly received test system. That means you have ordered a new cell line for the first time, and then you have to look at the origin. That what is the origin of this? Whether it is from human or non-human source, whether it is from primary tissue, whether it is from cancer. Then the age and passage number. So whether it is in the early passage or whether it is the late passage, what is the doubling time, and what are the characteristic feature of those cell lines, so that you can authenticate and validate that whatever you have received is A549, not HeLa. So assess the viability and sustainability. That means you have to check the viability also, and at the same time you have to check that there is no contamination in the newly received test system. So here the test system is cell line. Proof for responsiveness against negative and positive control item. So now you have to check that whatever cells that you have ordered is behaving or functioning as it is desired for the study. And you have to keep the record of the test system, that means the cell line, for that its traceability. So records be maintained of source, date of arrival conditions of the test system for cells and tissue, and for immediate source, that means from which commercial supplier. So whenever you are say, receiving a cell line from NCCS, so NCCS is the first immediate source, but NCCS must have source from ATCC. So then that is the primary donor or primary source of the material. So you have to maintain the traceability from where it has come. And the test and reference item. So whatever negative or positive controls that are going to be used for the study has to be properly labeled and stored at the desired temperature and humidity conditions. For all these, what we require is to establish standard operating procedures. And this standard operating procedures, it is for the facility. That means how environmental monitoring, temperature, humidity, contamination has to be managed. There are SOPs for apparatus, for its maintenance, performance monitoring, cleaning, decontamination. SOPs for material, reagent, and solutions for their integrity, expiry, sterility, and for the test system, that is the cell line, that is condition of storage, procedures for freezing, thawing, and how to assess the presence of any contamination, and how to eradicate those issues, and how to verify or authenticate the test system. Performance of the study. So that is the acceptance criteria for the study validity, criteria for assay repetitions. So the performance of the study will decide out of all those in vitro assays, which assay to be performed and why, proper justification. And the quality assurance for the overall process, that means inspection of frequencies and audit of critical phases, so that ensures that whatever process that is going on in the system is up to the mark. Performance of the study and reporting of the study results is a part of that. Storage and retention of records and materials. So that depends on the study type, and it is based on the OECD guideline that records has to be maintained till the end of the study or till the decision is being made. So performance of the study and reporting of the study results. So that is the last part of any in vitro screening. And once the screening is completed, the study director will prepare the report of the result, and based on that, the further in vivo studies can be planned, and further actions can be taken. Until the end of the study, all the records and the materials has to be retained. Thank you all. Now I'm open for questions.
Thank you very much, sir, for sharing your expertise and knowledge on topic in vitro studies and characterization. Sir has covered various assay procedures, compared 2D and 3D models, and sir has also discussed in detail about OECD guideline for in vitro studies. So now the session is open for questions and answers. Participants, you can share your question in the chat box. Sir, with your permission, I would like to ask one question on behalf of Dr. Javed Ahmed Khan. What is the minimum number of test system should be done for cytotoxicity?
So if it is for, say, academic study, it can be 3, but usually for drug discovery and what the NCI recommends is 13 different cell lines, and which covers majority of cell types.
Okay, sir.
So, sir, actually, just to add to that, is there any guidance given by any authority, or this is like a based on the experimental design or experimental setup designed by the study director?
No. If you look at the NCI guideline for cell line screening, they have mentioned the number of cell lines that are being used for any new drug discovery. But if it is for any academic interest, we usually do 2 or 3 cell lines. And if we have a specific intention that the molecule is specially designed for lung tissue, then we have to select 2 or 3 different cell lines which are originated from lung. But if it is unknown and if it is a random screening, we have to go for cell lines from different origin.
Okay.
Okay, sir. There is one also question from Dr. Rishikesh that what are the possible health risks to the investigator using cancer cell lines? Health hazard related to cancer cells.
So health hazard associated with handling cancer cell line is not there, because cancer is not a contagious disease. But if it is a transformed cell line, and if there is the virulence, it is still there, and if the cell line is not properly characterized, then there are chances of getting some concern.
Okay, sir.
Sir, anything like in this present viral conditions, any specific non-virulent cell line can help that can study for such antiviral studies, who is safe and can be used?
No, currently what people are doing is by handling them in viro cell lines. So viro cell line is the right cell line for culturing the viruses.
Okay.
But if you are dealing with viruses, you have to ensure that you are working in a class 3 safety level.
Okay, class 3 safety level is must.
Yeah. Class 3 is working in a negative pressure, so that whatever that is being generated inside the hood or inside the room is not being transmitted outside.
Okay.
Yeah.
One question from Dr. Surendra Kumar Sahu. Guidelines for short-term and long-term in vitro studies are same or different?
Unable to get you properly.
Sir, I would like to repeat it. Dr. Surendra Kumar Sahu is asking that whether the guidelines for short-term and long-term in vitro studies are same or different.
Usually, the in vitro studies are considered under short-term studies only, and there are long-term studies for animal testing, but usually in vitro studies are considered under short-term studies.
Okay, sir.
Is there sir any nowadays this toxicity studies in cosmetic? I think they have removed this animal experimentation 100%. In such a way, is there any such a recent things are there that they have restricted animal use for such toxicities, that no need of animal studies for, if this is safe, then no need to go further for toxicity studies in any
Yeah,
case.
so nowadays, 3D printing of cells are possible. So artificial skin is being constructed using this
Yeah.
3D bioprinting, and that
Yes.
exactly mimics our skin.
Natural skin. Yeah.
And so for majority of these cosmetic products, so now people are opting the synthetic skin or the mimic for skin using
Yes.
this 3D printed model. And that clearly shows the penetration and retention or all these activity.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for addressing the questions. Now, I would like to conclude this session, and I request all the participants, you can join the next session by given link at 2 p.m. Thank you. Thank you once again, sir.
Thank you, Saib, for your time. Very nice to have your very informative session. Chalo. Thank you.
Very much. It's a nice session, sir. It's very
Thank you.
nice.